Conor Orr joining us on the Wester Hotline. All right, Conor, so Cam Ward, number one. We're all pretty confident in that. It's looked like Browns and Travis Hunter at number two for a long time. And then that's where things start to turn, right? The Giants could go a number of different directions. They're an organization that has a head coach and GM trying to prove that they can keep things on the rails. And there are a lot of different ideas of what they could do, calls to move up into the top three. To me, 3, 4, 5, Giants, Patriots, Jags is where the draft finally starts to take shape.
I agree. And really kind of after 4, if you kind of have a choose your flavor for the Patriots and offensive tackle, I just think Abdul Carter, we're seeing that the late surge of sort of smokescreen misinformation. Now, all of a sudden, starting yesterday, he's too thin, like really, I think that's like, if teams are trying to spook anybody into having him fall to them, perhaps maybe that's the reason behind something like that. But I think the Giants have no choice but to major in something, and getting Abdul Carter at least gets them 3 pass rushers with high upside in a division where, yes, Jalen Hurts is excellent, but still struggles when he has to drop back and the play escapes him a little bit. And then you have Jaden Daniels, who's only a second-year quarterback, and yes, evades the rush well. But if you have 3 speed rushers coming at him, I mean, at least you're giving yourself a fighting chance, especially with the strength they have on the defensive interior. So that's where I think the Giants are going.
One thing we're talking about here in Buffalo, league context and the draft is James Cook's contract and, where running backs kind of slot in the league. I mentioned earlier today, I wonder if you would agree or have a thought on this, that the idea of Ashton Jeanty going 5th to the Jaguars, it feels like for the last 10 years, the idea of a running back going that high has been mocked, and people point out that that's stupid. And here are the Jaguars. They went out and they hired a really young GM, and if he goes running back at 5 years ago, that would have been panned, and I just don't see the same kind of pushback on high investment in running back right now.
Well, because here's the thing, right? I think we realized, and the Eagles Super Bowl helped us realize the fallacy in this, right? Where when analytics first came around in the Moneyball era, we had this first trove of data that told us, okay, running backs break down, running backs aren't worth, high amounts of contract, high amount of cap dollars, and running backs aren't worth this. But that was just our sample size to that point. And what happened was people kind of cribbed that part of the argument without really understanding why we need a running game, what running backs can actually do in terms of forcing defenses to play blocks, tiring them out, forcing them to respect play pass, all that kind of stuff. And so when the Eagles come and just literally mow everyone down, they'd been building a running game for 4 years that no one was prepared to stop. And so I think all of a sudden people are realizing, like, okay, analytics are sort of a snapshot in time and not this, like, set in stone truism that we have to follow in perpetuity. And so I think that there's a lot of value in some of the changing tides and changing ideas here.
I was looking at your mock, and you have Jeanty going high, Tyler Warren going high. There was also probably at one point a school of thought that tight ends shouldn't go that high, and then Kyle Pitts changed that. I remember going back to Kellen Winslow. Not that these are all success stories, but it used to be tight end, safety, linebacker, running back, and it feels like a lot of those rules are kind of out the window. Like you said, like whether it's more sample size or if it's just the evolution of the game, it has changed. And I feel like we have to respect how it is changing as we go.
Well, I think Kyle Shanahan changed a lot of that, right? Where it's like, I don't care what you call him. Kyle Juszczyk, for example, is incredibly valuable to the 49ers, and he's technically de facto like a fullback. And to me, someone like Tyler Warren is a supercharged version of that, where he can play wildcat quarterback, he can play fullback, he can play tight end, he can split out and play wide receiver. And so what you're doing is you're just forcing the defense into a personnel package that you want them to be in versus the other way around. And that's incredibly valuable. And so for me, it's like, I don't really care what you're called as long as you make the defense do what I want you to do.
Conor Orr on the Wester Hotline chatting draft with us. Draft, of course, is tomorrow night. We'll be out at Resurgence for round 1. You can join us for our draft parties. The Bills pick 30. For the Bills, Connor, we're all lining up ready for them to take defensive tackle, defensive end, or corner with maybe an outside shot at receiver. Those of us who live and die with hoping they take receiver, we kind of temper our expectations because it looks like a defense-heavy draft for the Bills. I wonder if there's any specific prospect you like to be in that range where the ceiling might be high and the Bills could snag some value.
I mean, so this is really like a choose your flavor edge rusher class, right? In particular, where you have some guys who are real speed edge rushers, and then you have some guys who are a little bit more like of your table setter guys. And, for example, like Nick Skirton from A&M, I really like just because I watched a lot of him in the lead up to the draft, and just the way that he's able to not get fooled by anything. Like, he's just a hard edge setter, and I think about those games where you're going to be playing Baltimore in January, right? Or you're going to be playing these, some of these teams that are going to be able to kind of run you over, and just how valuable someone like that would be. But, just getting Bosa in free agency, to me, that signals that the team knew they had a need at the position that they'll continue to address and they'll continue to hit in the draft because, this has been McDermott's quest since he got there, right? To build this stable of edge rushers that can pester Patrick Mahomes and all these guys without devoting a lot of blitz, right? And being able to drop guys back into coverage. So I would say that there's going to be some edge guys that fall to that point, and I think that they should jump on it.
If you're looking at the division, New England's at number 4. I think around here we have maybe the belief that the next team to challenge the Bills in the division, not that it will be this year, but that New England might be the one for this. Miami is in a strange spot. The Jets are kind of starting over to some point. And here's New England with a coach that has respect, a quarterback that looked pretty good, and a high pick. And, they added Diggs, and they stole away Mac Hollins. I feel like New England could be a sneaky riser this year.
I think they could too, and I think we have to consider the fact that some of these teams are not done yet either, right? And for example, like Tyreek Hill is theoretically available during this draft. Jalen Ramsey is theoretically available during this draft, and there could be a couple other guys, Trey Hendrickson, right, that could be jarred loose at some point over the course of this draft. And Mike Vrabel has wasted no time. He's not taking his foot off the accelerator at all. And I agree. But the number one component to that is quarterback with superstar potential. And Drake May is the closest thing that I've seen to Josh Allen since Josh Allen, right? So I really think that there's something there for sure.
Conor Orr on the Western Hotline. Connor, before we wrap things up, what do you think comes out of day one as the league storyline? If you want to just jump on any one, if it's a run on defensive tackles, if it's, the receivers got ignored, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, the surprise. What do you think the story front page is Friday morning?
Well, I think the Steelers should take Jalen Milroe at 21, and I put him there in my mock draft, and everyone laughed at me, and I hope I'm right just for that reason alone. I don't think I will be, but I love him a lot more than I think other people do. So I hope that's the story. I would guess the easy pick is Shedeur because that just seems we've developed this kind of sickly fascination with it. But I will say the thing that I'm going to be paying attention to is how many people try to get big quickly. And so how many are we going to reach on defensive tackles? Are we going to reach on some interior offensive linemen? Because we often find ourselves copying last year's Super Bowl winner and trying to replicate that very quickly. So, and it's a mistake, obviously, but, are people going to try to become the Eagles overnight and really, really dig into the tackles, the guards, and the running backs, too?
I love talking about the Steelers because I enjoy watching them kind of do what they do every year, 9 visits to running backs. And there was a story this week that they have a first-round grade on – is it Jackson Dart? But they might not take him if a lineman is there in the first round. I can't think of a better idea the Steelers could have had than Jalen Milroe in the last 5 years. So if they do it, to me, it's good for them. It might not work out, but at some point they have to change the way they operate and try to do something good.
I agree. And I think Milroe is kind of getting underrated a little bit. Like, if you look at all of his dropbacks at Alabama, almost none of them are scrambles. Like, all of his runs are design quarterback runs. They ran like a full run game through him. He managed to stay healthy in the toughest football conference in all of college football. And I think there's still a ceiling there for him as a passer. And if you're the Steelers, like, who cares? Like, you're in the AFC North. Run Jalen Milroe 22 times a game and throw the ball 11 times. The Eagles did it. He can be Jalen Hurts, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Conor Orr, Sports Illustrated, and Monday Morning Quarterback on the Western Hotline. Conor, thanks again, and enjoy the draft.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. You too.
All right.